favorite art supplies. And for the sketchbook, I'm using the sketchbook by Nemo Arts. I absolutely adore this sketchbook, and for some reason it is very easy to layer gouache on this sketchbook, and I have been finding it quite difficult to layer with gouache on other sketchbooks that I've used in the past. So this was a great alternative for me, and they're pretty affordable too. So I'll just link down her Instagram in the description box, and you can check out her website and everything. So let's just talk about the gouache paints I'm using. I'm using this gouache paints by Neva palette, and they are pretty affordable. I love them so much, and the artist grade paints, so they work really fine. I've had some struggles with other brands of gouache, such as student grade gouache from Himi, which is pretty famous on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, and everybody loves them. But for me, they were just not the correct option, so I had to switch over to these artist grade gouache, and I found them pretty great. Like Neva palette gouache are stunning, and I absolutely recommend them for beginners too, as they are extremely affordable, so you can buy them. If you're a beginner, gouache can be pretty intimidating for you in the start, but you just have to push through that phase and practice and learn more and more about the properties of gouache, and it will take quite some time to learn how gouache actually works and how to maintain the exact consistency that we want, but it will be all worth it in the end. One more thing I would like to mention is that I'm not a professional artist, and all these things that I'm telling you over here are not facts, and they're actually just the things that I found while experimenting and working with gouache. So I hope this is not misleading or anything else, and I hope you find this useful, even if just a tiny bit. While we are at it, let me just tell you that it is not important to buy artist grade, those premium and very costly art supplies while working with gouache. If you are a beginner and not a professional artist, you don't need those really costly art supplies that cost so much per tube and everything. You can just buy a set with primary colors, like a beginner set or something like that, the one you find more convenient for you. And if you can buy a professional grade gouache, if it's in your budget, then it's great, you can buy it. If not, then it's fine too. You can just go with student grade gouache, that's not a problem. Although from my experience with working with gouache, I found it pretty difficult to work with student grade gouache. I'm not saying that it's impossible or it's way too difficult, but it's a tiny bit more difficult than the artist grade gouache, as the artist grade gouache are more opaque and have much more pigment in them, so they work so well for everything. Like you can do anything with them, and layering is much more easier. But again, it's not important to buy artist grade in the start. Even I started with the student grade gouache, so you can just go for them. Moving on to sketchbook, you can use any sketchbook that you like, but I would recommend from 250 GSM to 300 GSM of sketchbook, and it does not have to be cotton sketchbook. It can be any other you can use any other papers that are not cotton. So cotton is pretty costly, whereas the other sheets are not as costly, so you can just go for them, as gouache is not like watercolors. Gouache does not has too much water in it, so it's not much of an issue. The paper does not buckles if it's of the right quality, although I don't recommend going for below than 240 GSM. You can just go above that with gouache. It's so much better that way. Also, I would say that go for a cold press sketchbook in the start, as the layering is so much more easier on a textured surface. You can either go for cold pressed or rough, although cold press is better because rough is just too rough. And hot pressed, it's pretty difficult to layer on hot pressed, so I just say don't challenge yourself in the start and just take your time with it and go for cold pressed sketchbooks or papers, whatever you want. So the next topic is blending the gouache. So there are a few tips and tricks to blend gouache, but in the start you might find them a little intimidating, a little difficult. You can just first thing you can do is make intermediate shade. Like if you are blending two shades such as pastel pink and pastel blue, so you can just make a pastel purple for the shade in between and go with it, or else you can use white to blend those two shades and give it a nice gradient. The next thing you can do is use water like you do with watercolors, although I don't recommend it. It would look a lot more different than you want, but if you're going for it, then you should just use water. It totally depends upon you. So blending is a tricky process when it comes to gouache, but you'll get used to it. Again, you can get used to it with practice. You can just practice separately. You don't have to make an artwork to learn gouache. You can just practice separately, swatch some shades, get to know the consistency